I would like to welcome you all in the International Conference on Responsible Tourism and Hospitality 2022 Industrial Session. By the way, I am Dr. Jean Paulo from City College of Angeles in the Philippines, and together with me, Dr. Ivy He from HKBU United International College, China, who will serve as your session chairs in today's events. We are very much happy and privileged to be chairing this session entitled Gastronomy and Culinary Tourism, as we have three esteemed and respected speakers from Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And now, let's start the session by introducing our speakers. Let me call my co-session chair, Dr. Ivy, to formally introduce our esteemed speakers.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. And now I would like to introduce our first speaker, which is Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Muhammad Hanafiya. He is the Associate Professor for the Faculty of Hotel and Tourism Management at the University Technology Mara, which is UITM, with more than 15 years of teaching experience, specializing in tourism economics, destination competitiveness, and tourism behavior. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Hanafiya.
Thank you very much, Ivy, for moderator, Dr. Jane. So first of all, I would like to thank the conference organizer for inviting me. And today I'll be sharing my point of view on the topic Pentahelix Sustainable Community-Based Tourism Development Model, where we talk about empowering the community local wisdom for heritage food sustainability. And there are reasons why tourism sustainability matters. I mean, definitely the first is talking about putting money to the right pockets, to the local economy, and eventually it should create jobs. And sustainability means creating a more authentic experience for visitors, because especially in the future. And we try to avoid some sort of like a displacement of locals, because they are the main stakeholders or the caretakers of that particular destinations. And sustainability also play roles in helping to preserve the resource and renew destination tourism infrastructure. And last but not least is to prepare destination for an increase in visitors. I mean, this goes back to the carrying capacity and whether we should focus on mass tourism, which will lead to over tourism, or should we actually look on the carbon footprints of tourists in order to ensure that the destination can be preserved, not only for the sake of the nature, man-made attraction, but also for the local culture. However, there are many issues actually uprising on this matter. First, as CBT has been promoted as a mean of tourism development, many also argues that tourism and gastronomic heritage are inseparable. Therefore, many researchers also argues that direct community participation should be able to produce benefits, especially towards their economic, social, cultural, and environmental well-being. And besides that, the active local communities involvement will actually enable them to enjoy and grasp development benefits, and perhaps it may actually reduce the adverse effects. But however, there are also evidence that uncontrolled development, especially in tourism destination, could actually erode the local cultural wisdom values as they are not well preserved. And talking about the setting of Indonesia, the Indonesian government have identified that sustainable tourism should be developed based on the pentahelix development models. And as a result, many of Indonesian-based researchers talks on the components of pentahelix, and most of them actually reported that the benefits of pentahelix collaboration actually it's off when it is supporting this community-based tourism development, offer rigorous economic growth and also job creation to the local community. And a study by El Nawati actually highlighted the role of how each stakeholders in the CBT can work together, but then again they can be divided into two groups, which is the internal and the external stakeholders. But again, even though there are various studies on community involvement, but the biggest issue right now is that there are limited understanding on how this community involvement, synergize with tourism development, especially among the developing destinations. So when we talk about community participations, perhaps we should look on how this community participation can become a key element in community-based tourism development. And we talk about the bottom-up planning, multi-stakeholder engagement, and capacity building. There are also concerns that there are various degrees of community participation, because they can be perhaps in the initial stage of tourism development, they can be under the manipulation stage, therapy, informing, consultation, plus precision, partnership, delegated powers, and citizen control. And definitely we are looking forward for community to be offered delegated power and citizen control, because at the end of the day, they are the one who actually the caretaker of that particular tourism destination. So there are many, this level of participation involve different characteristics. I mean, as you can see here, where we talk about degree of tokenism, I mean, the non-participation, most of them were involved on educating them, and they are actually community participation initiative are specifically on to appease the community members' irritation and frustration. But when we talk about degree of tokenism, where we start to inform them, we start to consult them, we start to place them accordingly. I mean, they are requested to give some feedbacks, and then we consider their opinions. At the same time, they can also give some advice to the government. But at the end of the day, within this degree of tokenism, we found out that the authority representative still will be the one who decided which recommendation they will follow. But the best level of participation should be degree of citizen power, where the locals were given some responsibilities and considered as partners, and they were given power. They were delegates with power, and they can control in which they can govern the plan, and they were actually in charge within the policy making, executing, and managing the tourism program. But again, the issues with community participation, especially in rural tourism, most of the time we did not consider the local wisdom. Perhaps the community local wisdom is actually a life values passed down in generation. It can be because of religions, culture, or custom, and usually it is passed orally in a social system. And for most, we say, rural community, it reflects the custom of heredity or practical knowledge, usually adopted by them, and empowering the community by restoring the traditional value is much needed. And their involvement and active participation based on the local wisdom that they practice are necessary to guarantee tourism sustainability and favorable interaction between the stakeholders. And I've been looking at the interrelationship between tourism and local wisdom. I mean, tourism product cannot get away from the needs to be operated in harmony with local environment, the society, the local culture wisdom. And we are talking about the local wisdom that be transferred from generation to generation. And these are transferred by the community leaders. Henceforth, actually, very researchers claim that a well-planned CBT must involve every aspect of the communities, which includes the aspect of local wisdom. And I mean, there are also researchers who propose that tourism development should apply local wisdom and cultivate this interreliance between the communities and other tourism stakeholders. And nonetheless, still yet, the local wisdom alone cannot cannot be considered as the main factor, because there are many other parties that should be included, which includes various tourism stakeholders, in order to come up with a proper planning and all-inclusive development plan. So the pentahelix actually has been proposed as the absolute sustainable tourism development concept, actually by various researchers, but it was quite popular among Indonesian researchers, and they refer this model as tools to develop synergy among agencies to optimize tourism development goals, and it combines, because it combines multiple actors in the process of tourism development. And there are 5 pentahelix actors. They are academic, business, government, community, and media. So most of the time, when we talk about academia, they are the one who actually work closely with the business, the tourism business, and government to plan and to identify what are the consequences and the outcome of such tourism development plan. But again, we always mislook on the participation of community and the effect of media power in ensuring that the tourism development is sustainable. And when we talk about community per se, we always refer community as the local people who actually are staying within the area of the tourism destination. But perhaps we always tend to forget that this community have their own livelihood. They follow certain life rules, and these rules are coming from the local wisdom. So because of that, there are a lot of challenges. I mean, the challenge is definitely on the heterogeneity of the local communities, because there are, I mean, again, we need to understand that we are dealing with the rural local communities. And based on the literature review, we found that there are a few research gaps. First is on the lack of community local wisdom adoption in tourism planning and development, which actually was found to be an important factors, especially among the indigenous tourism research. Yeah. And the second one is the top-down tourism development planning system carried out by the government, where they are the one who decide what to do, what to have, and what to develop. I mean, rather than going back to the root of the community, which is the local wisdom. And there is also issues on the lack of collaborations between the community and the other pentahelix stakeholders. Well, as we did our systematic literature review, we found that most of the communities still lack tourism awareness. I mean, various studies reported that, which actually caused limited motivation for them to participate actively in tourism activities, which in the focus of the study is on the tourism development. And such demotivations, such limited motivation actually cause dissent and conflicts within the community. And besides that, we found there's a lack of collaboration between government and local community. These are studies, various studies actually reported that government and local community does not gel well, even though, I mean, again, the government actually were coming from the community, but again, the reason was not totally the government fault. Perhaps the issue is that the awareness of local community on the development plan and what are the impacts that they will be receiving was the biggest, the main issues on this matter. And again, another reason why there is a lack of collaboration, because most of the time, especially in the third world countries, the communities have no say in the tourism development plan and the execution of that particular development plan, and in which it creates a tension between both parties. And besides that, we found that there are still barriers, I mean, to resident participation, even when the government try to involve them in the early stage of tourism development. The reason because most of the rural community have low level of education, which subsequently generates lacks of knowledge about tourism per se. And in fact, the biggest concern is that their financial and living conditions are still low. Therefore, their main we say concern on their livelihood is whether they can continue living and to search for more income to support their families. And that is the reason why, as they are busy, they have lack of time to participate in tourism planning and tourism development. And this is actually supported by many studies that tourism perception about local community does correlate about low income, in which we also found that power distinction, institutional obstacle, especially by these the government's agencies, and the local disbelief in authorities are the reason why there are still a lot of barriers to resident participation in CBT planning and development process. So to conclude, I mean, we found that the lack of community participation have significant potential to create conflicts to disturb CBT development. And we also found that the local community wisdom has been found as an appropriate element to avoid conflicts in the future. But nonetheless, when we talk about the gastronomy aspect, I mean, the promotion of local food culture and tradition accordingly to the local wisdom would allow a destination to showcase the community-rich intangible heritage, their local custom and cultural tourism product. This is another biggest issue with local food, because most of the foods were modified according to the visitor's taste, in which it actually creates what we say lack of understanding on what are the truthful of this local food, and how, I mean, the decorum, the eating decorum, and how the local food being prepared. So perhaps by looking on the Pentahelix Corporation, by including the local community with the base of the local wisdom, and by including the media, the academia, the industry, and also the government, we could be achieving the optimize the role of community. The role of community local wisdom within the sustainable tourism development agenda. So yeah, with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll be open for any Q&A sessions. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hafiz, for the very insightful presentation. Now I would like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Jem Monren Tapala Mercado. Mr. James is an academic staff from the Department of Tourism Management at the College of Tourism and Hospitality Management of the University of Santo Tomas, UST. I'll now pass the floor to our second speaker, Mr. James.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ivy, for that introduction, and to present to you a short overview on how we can scientifically do research or even to analyze culinary resources of our localities in terms of safeguarding and to continuously preserve and sustain our culinary resources of the local communities. The title of my presentation is Wag Munang Takpan at Mapapanis, the context of culinary safeguarding dimensions. In the Philippines, when we cook something and to at some point to preserve it, to longer the span of a particular food, we always tell the cook or anyone from each houses that do not cover it while it is hot, because at some point moisture will create inside of it, and that moisture now will provide now this kind of spoiling of the food that we are preparing or we prepared for our guests, if it is a fiesta or a celebration, or if it is a family gathering or a simple family dinner or lunch. So that's the meaning of wag munang takpan at mapapanis. Now, in terms of interpretation, we would like our culinary traditions and heritage to be sustained in our local communities. But the question is, how can we do this? A while ago, our speaker a while ago told us about local communities' perspective in terms of tourism development or in terms of culinary heritage tourism development. And that's one of the things that we would like to highlight on this. Now, how can we do that? And what are these safeguarding dimensions for culinary heritage? So basically, food is one of the basic needs of the society. We definitely eat here in the Philippines at least 6 times a day. That's the traditional thing that we have here, from breakfast, AM snack, lunch, PM snack, dinner, and at some point we have our evening snacks. Now, basically, aside from the context of we want to sustain our energy through food, food is also an identity of the community. And because of this context that it is an identity, we would like to strengthen and to tell everyone that this is who we are when it comes to food. And most of our researchers also here in the Philippines would dwell on the socio-cultural importance or significance of food. And according to UNESCO in 2003, food is considered as one of the heritage of their entities. And UNESCO also highlighted the definition of heritage, and I quote, "These are legacies from the past, what we live in today, and what we pass on individually or collectively to our future generations." So basically, the transmission of heritage, the transmission of these resources from generation to generation must be sustained. And it doesn't mean that we only focus on the food itself, but the story of this food must also be transmitted and continually passed on to future generations. In the contextual definition, if we dwell on heritage and we trace down where is food in this global context of heritage, we identify it as intangible cultural heritage. And according to UNESCO, and I quote, "It encompasses practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, and skills of communities, groups, or in some cases, individual people." It is very important that it is embedded to the community, and this is who they are, what they practice in their everyday lives, and they expressed it with other people, with their peers, with their co-communities, and with, at some point, if we're talking about tourism, with our guests, with our tourists. If we dwell on intangible cultural heritage, specifically, if we would like to point out where is food, this is under social practices, rituals, and festive events, which are habitual activities that structure the lives of communities and groups and that are shared by are relevant to many of their members. In our researches that we published from 2018 up to 2022, we identified that there are a lot of stories of food, and these are under the culinary heritage significance, from its history, the spiritual context, the relationship of food to our beliefs and faith, the culinary context, the basic things that we wanted to know about food, how you cook it, how you preserve it, how you present it to people. How this food really important to the community? Is it related to a specific event or a particular tradition that is being practiced not only by an individual but this community alone? How this food aesthetically significant in terms of its appearance, how these different ingredients dwell and provide now the totality of its uniqueness compared with other food. How food is really important to the economic stability of our communities. In terms of agriculture, how is it important that these basic landscapes, marinescapes, and even the context of the produce, the raw products and ingredients that you can get from these places could be developed as a culinary tradition? And lastly, which is also very important, the symbolical context of food, how it is being interpreted in the morals and values of the community. So those are the things that we would like to highlight on or to research on when it comes to culinary significance. But as we all know, nowadays, that development, specifically commercialization, globalization, urbanization, is really experienced and must be attained by different communities also. But at some point, because of these changes that communities are experiencing, it degrades now the identity, how food is really significant to these communities. So there is a two variables that at some point did not at some point interconnect with the context of how they can balance safeguarding or continuing the tradition and the development side. And that is now what UNESCO is highlighting. Specifically, if we're talking about intangible cultural heritage, we would like to safeguard the safeguarding principles of ICH. And in the definition of UNESCO, and I quote, measures aim at ensuring the viability or what we call the transmission of heritage, including identification, documentation, research, preservation, protection, promotion, enhancement, transmission, either it is formal or informal education, as well as revitalization of various aspects of such heritage. These are some of the things that UNESCO is telling us, especially the member states, the government, that if you would like to implement safeguarding principles to your ICH, these are some of the things that you would like to implement, especially when it comes to food. There's a big question, or at some point, you can ask yourselves in your respective countries, are your countries, your specific stakeholders are doing this kind of things? Do you identify, document, research properly your culinary heritage? Or how can you promote, protect, using tourism, for example? Are we only focusing on the commercialization of food, or are we also providing the identity through tourism? So from our publication from 2018 and in 2021, we identified now what are these safeguarding dimensions or the details on how we can measure culinary safeguarding. So we've identified 10. So coming from the management perspectives, how these different stakeholders provide now an institution or a body or a specific process on how you manage your culinary heritage in a specific community. How about legislation? Are there any laws, ordinances available? Are you formally recognizing your food? Do you have your own ordinance in your towns, in your provinces, or in the country? Raw ingredients and the environment that would focus on the agricultural perspective of food. Cooking tradition, food appearance, plating and design, restaurant facility and design, viability or the transmission of heritage, promotions, stakeholders' participation, visibility, and even research. So basically, this particular safeguarding principles were identified through these different frameworks that we've checked on, from the Australia Ecomos Bureau Charter in 2013, from the researches conducted by Getty Conservation Institute, from the UNWTO and Basque Culinary Center about the development of culinary heritage or gastronomy tourism, from the researches of one of our well-known culinary historians, Feliz Prudente Santa Maria, from the context of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and from UNESCO. And by the way, it's 11 safeguarding principles, not 10. Now, how this 11 safeguarding principles at some point reflected to a specific case study. And I would like to share with you a brief sharing of one of our researches, which is about this lomi or a noodle dish here in the Philippines. Well, basically, this is one of the significant dishes from one of our province, from the province of Batangas, specifically in Lipa City. Etymologically speaking, lomi came from the word lo, which means thick, and mi, which means noodles. It's a thick noodle soup, actually. And it is an acculturated food, an acculturated dish coming from the Chinese. Specifically, it was introduced by To Kim Eng in 1966 in the city, and it was first commercialized to the public in 1968. And up until now, it is rampantly being seen as a culinary product of the province, specifically also by the city of Lipa. So through cultural heritage mapping, I documented 120 bowls of lomi, eating it for 2 weeks, and also identifying the story through the culinary heritage significant framework that I showed to you a while ago, and also the 11 dimensions on culinary safeguarding, as well as documenting the associated food. No, here in the Philippines, we Filipinos, we are not fond of eating one food in one particular time. We are eating feast. No, there is always a partner food for each particular food. So I also documented this associated heritage of lomi. So this is the map of the town proper, and I've identified now the different lomi eateries or restaurants available in the city proper. So these are now the documented areas. If I can remember, that is 29 or 27 or 29 restaurants. Then from that, I've collected now the story of the noodle dish coming from its history down to the point of how it is being used by the community. And from that, I also noticed the context of how they preserve and safeguard their culinary tradition. Unfortunately, they don't have their own institution focusing on culinary heritage. So the point of having also, they don't have also any legislation about this food, but they are rich in terms of the raw ingredients like pork, the noodle itself, and even some of these places put toppings, no? Like they have what we call pork meatballs. They have also putting up, they call it as kikiam. This is sliced pork, ground pork, normally fried and also being topped now to these noodle dishes. These are very seen and available to their public markets. The culinary tradition is very significant, which is it was passed down through generation to generation. To end this presentation, this is me and my grandmother. I started to be curious in terms of food, specifically Filipino culinary heritage, because of my grandmother. As always, when we visited her in Batangas, she will always tell us to go to a specific pansiteria and eat this kind of dish. And that is why I eventually love and be fanatic with noodles in general. I have one research that we've documented all kinds of noodle dishes here in Luzon Island, Philippines. And I would like to share to you as our participants of this panel that it is very important for us to appreciate first our food or our heritage in general. And once that we appreciate and once we know that these are very significant, why not to extend our appreciation to at some point the context of how we can contribute something to conserve, preserve, and safeguard this heritage resource. With that, I end also with these pictures with the different stakeholders, which are they are the stars of this culinary heritage. They are the ones who are maintaining and sustaining this kind of heritage up until now. And we need to thank them and acknowledge their anticipating participation with this kind of heritage value that we have. Thank you very much, and mabuhay from the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Jane, for the wonderful sharing. Now, I would like to introduce our third speaker, Mr. Adi Martyadi. Mr. Adi, also known as Chef Adi, is a restaurant consultant who has successfully created various business concepts in the food and beverage industry throughout the country and even abroad. His roles are very diverse, ranging from the ASEAN and national assessors culinary instructor, principal of culinary school, culinary expert, and also the president of Islamic Chef and Culinary of Indonesia. So I'll now pass the floor to Mr. Adi.
Thank you very much. This opportunity. I'm from Indonesia. Okay, this is gastronomy, halal food Indonesia. So this is from Indonesian gastronomy, and Indonesian gastronomy is the study of the food and culture with a particular focus on gourmet cuisine. Modern gastronomy has its root. It's several French manuscripts published in the 1018. But it is related to food, public science, and art. So there are 6 aspect gastronomy in Indonesian. Uh, Based on data from Indonesian Center for Culinary and Gastronomic Studies, until now, at least there are 2,000 type of vegetable, 400 types of fruit, and 1,600 types of spices spread throughout Indonesia. In addition to the wealth of raw material, here are 6 other aspects that affect the gastronomic identity in Indonesia. In the one, geography in Indonesia is one of the country cross by the equator. Indonesia has the advantage of being able to have a variety of spices. The spices greatly influence the taste of Indonesia culinary. Indonesia has successfully been known as a country that not only has many spices but also produce the best variety of spices. And number 2, in the history, each region in Indonesia has its own distinct culinary. Regional culinary recipe are given for generation since time immemorial. Therefore, in additional to the recipe, the history and story behind the food is an interesting thing. Is number 3, ethnic diversity. Ethnic diversity give rise to a new food menu from its regional group. This then make Indonesia have various type of traditional culinary dish, which are the traditional heritage of the ancestor. Number 4 is culinary ethnic. One of the characteristic of Indonesia gastronomy in terms of the ethnic of eating food. In addition to the usual way of eating using spoon and fork, not a few Indonesians use their hand directly to eat this. It commonplace when in some place to eat Indonesian provide cowboy to wash their hands directly at the dining table. This ethnic is also one of the attraction of Indonesian culinary. For example, the history of Balinese betutu chicken influenced by Majapahit culture. And number 5, taste. The taste of Indonesia has a variety of regional food with their own flavor. Through this flavor, people can distinguish Indonesian food from one region and another, like Japanese cuisine, what is famous is the sweetness. Sumatra, this that mostly have a spicy taste, as well as Eastern Indonesian dish that tend to be salty. In number 6, it's recipe. Recipe, the success of traditional recipe cannot be separate from the invention of the indigenous people of the area. Recipe can be influenced by the type of menu, diet to the taste of the dish served, like culinary from Java, which has many menus made menu from soybean, Ambon with raw material for sengo and corn. Halal food gastronomy, wide variety of halal food in available in Indonesia. I think there is a wide variety of halal food in my city. A significant majority, over 90%, are to the opinion that there is wide variety of halal food in Indonesia. While Indonesia cuisine is by far a most consumed, other regional cuisine are also becoming popular. Four of the next five cuisine most consumed are regional cuisine. Japanese cuisine in particular has become increased popularity among the younger Indonesian dinner. Which of this cuisine do you often eat? Like Thailand, Indian, Turkish, Italian, Chinese, Korean, American, and Malaysian, Japanese, and Indonesian. The F&B industry has immense opportunities to expand on the halal food offering, give in the growing interconnectivity between countries and culture. This can be achieved through creating halal version of regional and fusion food, which the work customer preference seems to be shifting toward. Halal food gastronomy demand for more halal option in the East Asian cuisine. Although over 30% state that there is enough halal food in their city, roughly the some percent of consumer point out that there is not enough halal Chinese option. The next five cuisine type highlight as not having enough halal option are Korean, Japanese, American, Thai, or Vietnamese. Top 10 most consumed cuisine: Indonesian, Malaysian, Turkish, Italian, Chinese, Korean, and Spanish, French is the top 10 enough halal option. In your opinion, which of these cuisine are not offered enough as halal food in your city? Like Spanish 8%, French 9%, and then American 12%, Japanese 13%, and Korean 14%. Uh, the enthusiasts offer this cuisine interest and opportunity for a stakeholder in the F&B sector that there is still from for grow to ensure accessibility of this cuisine. Stakeholder need to overcome challenges such as lack of knowledge in the what halal food mean and importance is suitable alternative to the non-halal ingredient. With where is the demand for authentic regional cuisine established should also consider fusion food. It is among the fastest growing trend that allow restaurant to gain a competitive edge by being creative and having unique selling purpose. In the Japanese cuisine dominate the local skin in Indonesia. What type of Indonesian cuisine do you eat the most? Maybe 70 uh, 73% Japanese, 46% Sundanese. If you know Sundanese, there is each one from Indonesian is very traditional, and then 37% Padang. You know Padang, Sumatera with rendang, and then 30% Betawi, 19% Madura, 18% Aceh, and then Makassar 10%. That is a Japanese food. Is a popularity of the warung Tegal, commonly abbreviated as warteg. Warung Tegal are local roadside entries serving Japanese food, which are affordable and filling meals. The unique nature to each of this cuisine clearly demonstrate the facility of Indonesian food and why it's popular among of the dinners. Indonesian are on quest are authentic quality food that it's halal. Restaurant hours attract customer by offering the menu over the course of the week that cater the different cuisine. So, limited halal in Balinese and Manado option. Indonesian, there's a good venue in the Bali and Manado. In your opinion, which of the following cuisine are really found as halal food in your city? Like Balinese, Manado, Nusa Tenggara, Medan, and Kepulauan Maluku. Bali, Manado, and Nusa Tenggara Timur are among the non-Muslim majority areas in Indonesia. Bali and Manado cuisine are well known their non-halal dish. This type of dish have been served by the local for years using raw material and ingredients that include non-halal ingredients to maintain authenticity and preserve the culture. However, there are another authentic food alternative from this area that are halal. The F&B players should take advantage of the public enthusiasm by providing authentic halal food from our area. Halal food gastronomy in Indonesia, KFC is the top the mind brand in the fast food space, but top of mind brand awareness, brand buy of grouping. The same goes for the another brand such as Domino's, Pizza Hut, and Burger King. A great way is by boosting online sales through offering this coupon when purchasing in application. In traditional snack are the most common comfort food. Almost 90% of the respondent attest to having a comfort food. Traditional snack and dessert such as a cendol from Indonesia and fried food are the most common comfort food. 49%, followed by potato chips, 48%. This is line with the type of snack recently consumed fried foods and chips such as a potato and cassava chips. 46% respondent feel the to snack mostly when watching TV or a video on YouTube. 41%, and when stressed. The snacking habit among Indonesia provide an insight for the F&B players who could take advantage by providing the right type of snack in the right portion with the right packaging. The growing concerns over physical health and the environment should also be a factor that are taken into consideration. Healthy and nutritious snack in the environmentally friendly packaging. Uh, Maybe a stakeholder opinion, restaurant owner in Indonesia, many F&B and hotel players are starting to take interest the halal market trend, halal market food. Some of them are typing to modify non-halal food and turn them into halal food. And the high hotel management, since there are more local tourists for the while during the pandemic, Indonesian and halal food will be highly sought after. For now, it's still a restaurant owner quite sense, but I can see grow in various type of food like Western and East Asian cuisine like Japanese and Korean. So in the Indonesian, there's halal Indonesian food, herbs and spices. This is a gastronomic from Indonesia with the culture and story in the behind of the food. Welcome to Indonesia and welcome to Say Indonesian Halal Food Gastronomy and Specialty. I want to serve you if you come to Indonesian. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much again to our respected speakers, again to Dr. Hafiz, to Mr. Jim, and of course to Chef Adi.
Thank you everyone for joining the session. So there are some announcements before we end the session. The session recording will be made available at this website here. And then the e-certificate of attendance will be issued to delegates who complete a post-conference survey. You can access the survey at this website. Also, please take note that the survey will be closed after 1 week. And for more information about ICRTH 2022 and other conference sessions, please feel free to visit our official conference website, which is the one listed on the slide. And if you have any other questions about our ICRTH conference, please feel free to contact us through ICRTH 2022 at responsibleborneo.com.